Yo guys, welcome back to a brand new video. Before anyone shits their pants over the title, it's not directed at Kwite, it's moreover directed towards the people of Twitter, since that is going to be a huge portion of the video. Now I wanted to refrain from making this video until Kwite actually did end up responding, and for the sole reason is because I really wanted to hear both sides before I actually formed an opinion over this. And the whole reason for that is because of the situation that happened with Pyrocynical a couple years back, which honestly should have set a precedent for pretty much everybody on YouTube and on Twitter, that it's best to hear both sides before you make an assumption about the situation. Unless there's like absolute damning proof, which there isn't in this case, that the assault actually happened. But anyways, to reiterate what exactly happened on Twitter, there was someone named Orion who Kwite used to have a relationship with, and I guess I would say more of a friendly relationship than actual romantic. But this person has expressed genuine malice towards Kwite, where they released a tweet longer which has been proven by Kwite that it is entirely slander, but basically saying that Kwite is manipulative and would gaslight and would force himself onto this person. Orion also said in this tweet longer that they're the reason Kwite had so much success on YouTube is because they came up with Kwite's alternate persona, as in the glasses and the surgical mask with the hoodie on. But again, to reiterate, this person Orion made huge accusations against Kwite, whether it be from something small like manipulation to going all the way up to sexual assault. And every single thing that Orion said in the tweet longer that they made about Kwite is a complete and utter lie. And the only reason that I know this is because of Kwite's response video, which is an hour and a half long, and not only disproves every single thing that Orion says in that tweet longer, but also shows that Orion is a very mentally unstable person, whether that be with themselves or with other people. It was easily expressed, even if Kwite didn't say this, just by looking through the messages. Orion was a kind of person who leached off of Kwite for validation, and as Kwite says in his video, he felt a sense of obligation to help Orion, but it wasn't in a friendly sense, it was more in a sense of he needed to help Orion because he was so close to the brink of just pure mental instability that Kwite felt like Orion was going to hurt himself. Now there's two things about Orion that I specifically want to talk about that really represent what kind of person Orion is, that maybe will help people understand the person that Kwite was friends with. Kwite talks about in the video multiple times about how Orion would constantly belittle themselves, and over Kwite would be there to reassure them and validate them. But no matter how much time Kwite would spend doing that, Orion would consistently circle back and do the same exact thing, because obviously Kwite's validation meant the most to him. Now, if anyone's ever dealt with this kind of person, specifically someone who seeks validation from someone else by belittling themselves, trying not only to be friends with those people, but also to be there constantly to reassure that person because you feel like they're depending on you, as Kwite said, can be insanely mentally draining, especially when those people never try and actively improve themselves, so they stop thinking that way. So Kwite decided to break things off with Orion, which I think was a great thing to do, because it would be awful to force yourself to sit there and have to deal with that same shit constantly from someone who refuses to try and at least put themselves in a better mindset. But Orion's version of this was Kwite decided to leave him behind because he was gaining fame and ghosting him or some stupid shit. Regardless, Kwite decided to cut Orion off because they were pretty much leeching off of him for validation. And as he said, Kwite had begun to improve as a person, whereas Orion hadn't. So it became a very one-sided relationship. Regardless, from what I took away from his video is that this is kind of the main reason why Kwite decided to finally split off the relationship he had with Orion, because there was nothing positive coming out of it for him. And this kind of leads into the second thing that Orion did, which was after Kwite had decided to end the relationship. And that's Orion's mentality of, if I can't have him, nobody can. And that's kind of when all these allegations had started. After cutting off their platonic relationship, Orion seems to have started reaching out to a bunch of different, and I guess smaller YouTubers, and making up these allegations where his story changed practically every time. And again, Kwite proves that in the video he made. And Orion kind of reveals that because again, he shows in a message in his video that Orion seemingly becomes jealous that he's making other friends that isn't him. So like little by little, all the pieces start coming together and it really shows what kind of person Orion is, and it's exactly what kind of person that he accused Kwite of being. So really, the entire tweet longer that Orion made of Kwite is just a massive projection, and that's all it is. Now, I think a lot of people believed Orion because you would think, right, if someone's gonna make an accusation like this going years back and there was proof to disregard it, then the person you're making the accusations against would easily grab that proof just like that, which is what Kwite did. But you'd be like, well, no, like, why would they lie about that? That's an awful thing to lie about. Not to mention an incredibly fucking stupid thing to lie about. And apart from that, I think because Kwite started taking so long with his response, which I don't think anyone's blaming him for, because he pulled up a shitload of evidence, that kind of also made people think that Kwite was just being silent about the whole thing. But I think a lot of people kind of pointed out Orion's flaws in the, in quotations, evidence that he had, since Orion said that Kwite had deactivated his Discord account, which never happened, and their proof of that was just showing a picture of his account, or a video of it. And then their story changed though, he deleted all of our messages, but never showed their chats with all the messages deleted. And I think a lot of people found that suspicious. Am I gonna sit here and say that I supported Kwite from the start, because I didn't? Despite most of the evidence being hearsay and like literal just bland pictures of nothing, it would just be so fucking absurd to lie about something like this that it did seem kind of believable in the beginning. But again, I didn't want to make an opinion of this or like a full official statement until Kwite's response did come out, and for a good fucking reason, obviously. Now the reason I decided to mention that is because the people who actively use Twitter to talk about this kind of shit need to learn to do the same thing. They will hear one side of a story and immediately make an assumption and state it as fact, and it is so aggravating to see that, especially the people who started like berating Kwite's comments literally a day, even 2 days after these accusations came out, saying brain dead shit like, what a good content creator, I sure hope he doesn't end up being a sexual abuser, right? Like giving these sarcastic ass comments, are the ones saying, man, I really hope he doesn't sweep this under the rug, obviously sarcastic, in which 1 or 2 days isn't even enough time to sweep things like this under the rug. And not to mention, even after that, Kwite had also said on his Discord that he would talk about it, but to give him a few days. But a majority of these people are the fucking trogs from Twitter that made the immediate assumption that Kwite was a rapist without even hearing anything he had to say. Now, thankfully with Kwite's response, I would say most people are finally seeing the full picture and what kind of person Orion is. Not to mention, Orion also made a fake document about his, quote, PTSD, where there were so many errors in that document, it was so clearly faked, and someone even pointed out that the signature on the document was copy-pasted from Google. Now, besides all that, there is something I do want to talk about that I saw on Twitter. There was a comment that got a lot of support, which I do not agree with whatsoever. The comment said, haven't watched Kwite's response yet, but if it turns out he's innocent, for the love of fuck, do not harass people who supported Orion. Now, if you left it there, I would have nothing else to say about this. I wouldn't have even talked about it. But then they followed up with another sentence that said, I would always rather support a potential liar than a potential rapist. Do not feel guilty for dropping Kwite when you found out. Comments, in my opinion, I feel like this comment and comments like it severely undermine how severe lying about a situation like this is, because in both scenarios, someone's life is going to be ruined. Comments like this also make it sound like you have to pick a side before even hearing the rest of the evidence, which is not true. I would rather support neither side until I hear the rest of what's actually going on. Sure, you can make opinions and form deductions about what's happening with evidence that's been proven or been given, but in a scenario like this where people are waiting for Kwite's response, immediately making the assumption that one person is right and then again tweeting it out and stating that it's fact is so fucking stupid. So no, I would not rather support a potential liar than a potential rapist. I would rather not support anyone until I get the entire story. It's that fucking simple. A lot of people think that just because proof and evidence comes out to kind of reverse these accusations, everything's gonna be okay, which it won't be. Every time something like this happens, people have to reveal very private and personal information about themselves, which Kwite had to do in his video, which he most likely would never have told anyone on the internet before. Apart from that, there are probably people who will never see the video he made and have already made the assumption that he is a rapist. So there's a pretty good handful of people out there who will see him that way for the rest of their lives without knowing the truth. And this also changes everyone's outlook and view on this creator after the allegations like this come out, whether they get proven wrong or not. Kwite even said that he's not even sure if YouTube is for him anymore. His life is potentially ruined because of lies and manipulation. So no, if I were you, I would not support anyone until I hear the entire story. Honestly, that's about it.